Welcome to What CEOs Talk About. Do you wonder what CEOs talk about behind closed doors? How they bring their vision to reality? How do they overcome and succeed through adversity? We share that and so much more with each episode. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, everybody. My name is Martin Hunter. I am the host of What CEOs Talk About. Today, you guys are going to have a doozy. Styron, I was trying to think, how long have we known each other? How long is it?
I'm guessing about close to 10 years.
Yeah, we met, I think, 2013, somewhere around there.
Yeah,
so today, listeners, you're going to hear two old guys talk about anything and everything under the sun. But wait. Meet in the middle. Styron has an amazing topic that I think everybody should know about. And as a CEO and a leader of an organization, you should dive down deep into what are you providing in helping the majority of your employees deal with this specific issue. So we want to thank our sponsor. Styron, have you had or do you know anybody who's exited and sold their company?
I do. A good friend of mine sold his company not too long ago.
And was it a good experience or a bad experience?
It was a tough experience for him. So I would say he would call it a bad experience.
All right. So the sponsors, there's three sponsors today. So the first sponsor is STS Capital Partners. And what they do is they provide the possibility for extraordinary exits. And what I mean by that is that instead of going through all the economics and the banking and stuff like that, they really focus on marketing the company to get sold so that they often get double the initial evaluation that a lot of companies get, which is really good. And they eliminate all the banking and stuff in the middle, and they really focus of selling to strategic, hence STS, right? So for the companies that don't qualify, what Urgio does is they help them and prepare and be attractive for that. So you're looking to sell your company. You're not necessarily there yet. You need to scale. You need to accelerate. You need to consolidate, or you need to optimize. Then Urgio gets you ready for that exit. Now, the final sponsor is UltraVest. Now that you've been capable of optimizing, you've sold your company, a lot of people, once they've sold, bought the boat, the biggest thing that they come back to us is they say, hey, I don't feel fulfilled. I've got financial freedom, but I don't feel fulfilled. UltraVest, what UltraVest does is it creates a system and a network of creating underserved non-for-profit to get good governance through the investment of these exits that donate and use UltraVest to be able to donate on these underserved non-for-profit. Because, I mean, if you want to talk about financial managements and controls, not all of these big non-for-profits are really serving, the community in its while. So anyways, thank you very much. That's the sponsors for Urgio, STS Capital Partners, and UltraVest. So our guest, Styron Powers, man of mystery. On the financial side, can you tell the listeners who you are and what you do?
Sure. I'm a retired corporate executive. I work for major corporations such as ExxonMobil, BP, Lockheed Martin, and I worked in the field of environmental health and safety. So my job was pretty simple. My job was to protect human life, be it through our environmental emissions and cleanups, the health of our employees, or the physical safety of our employees. It gave me the luxury of working in about 30 different countries, meeting some great people, and able to take pride in the fact that more employees were able to go home at the end of their shift versus being injured, or in the worst case, for some of my companies that were hired me, some employees actually lost their lives. So it's something that I had a great deal of passion for, still have a great deal of passion for, and enjoy doing it. I left that in sometime after 2017, and in talking to a lot of friends who explained to me they were going to work for the rest of their lives, and I thought that was a peculiar thing to say. And I realized they were serious. So I started asking, why on earth, since you've told me you hate your job, would you want to work for the rest of your life? And they told me they couldn't afford to retire. And then I love to read. I started reading more about what was going on in the United States in particular. And I was amazed and dismayed to find out how poorly Americans are managing their finances.
Mhm.
The stat that has stuck with me is about 60% of Americans cannot afford a $400 emergency bill. I mean, that could be your car, that could be your heating system, that can be an unexpected medical bill since the United States does not have great health care. And I started writing a blog helping Americans to better understand how I achieve financial freedom and how it's really not rocket science. It's really very simple. It's all about spending less money than you earn,
Mhm.
saving some money, and investing the money. So I help Americans, my readers, understand how do you budget, how do you save, what's the safest way to invest depending on your risk tolerance, and how do you actually achieve that financial freedom at a earlier age than they were hoping to achieve it.
Mhm. So I think that so the title of the show really is about that trigger event, which is most Americans, and I'm assuming not just Americans. I'm assuming that the world in itself is very in debt or debt heavy, where they cannot afford the cash flow, cannot afford a small $400 expense.
I
Like,
would agree. America's a rich country. So if we're at 60%, I'm guessing the rest of the world is exceeding that
yeah.
60%.
So let's dive right into this. Um, why do you think that is? Why do you think that? And let's just focus on the U.S. for now. Let's focus on America and say 60%. So we're at what, 350, 360 million
Yep.
now?
Hmm.
So that means half of that plus is, what will we call that? I wouldn't say below poverty, but in a cash crunch, I guess.
In a cash crunch, they do not have emergency savings.
Hmm. And how do you think they got there? Why do you think that's the cause?
You know, Americans will talk about almost any subject except one, money. Americans will tell their friends about their sex lives more than you want to hear. But Americans are very private about money, which I find somewhat interesting. But
Hmm.
another problem is not only do we fail to talk about it with our parents, with our siblings, with our friends, we don't learn about it. So I went to school, United States, grades 1 through 12, and I learned absolutely nothing about what I call financial
Agreed.
literacy. Then I go to college and I'm an engineer. I learned nothing about financial literacy. I get an MBA. I learn a tiny, tiny bit. I get a master's in advanced management, a tiny, tiny bit. So in the United States, if you want to understand bonds and ETFs, real estate, investments, you have to do it on your own. Now,
Hmm.
fortunately, I love to read. So I've read about 100 books on the subject. I read every day about 100 pages, mostly on that subject. And I've learned a great deal. I've taken workshops and courses on it. The average American does not do that. And unfortunately, a lot of Americans lack living for now, where
Hmm.
they think, well, it's great to drive that brand new $75,000 Mercedes Benz. And I remember my own daughter was picking on me because I picked up at the airport and I'm driving my 17-year-old car and she's saying, Dad, you ought to get a new car. It's embarrassing. And I said, Amanda, how much do you owe for college loans? She says, I don't owe anything. You paid for it. I said, oh, so maybe that's one of the reasons I'm driving this 17-year-old car so that you don't have college loans. And suddenly she goes, you know what? And she actually rubbed the car and said, this is a nice car, Dad. This is a nice car. But it's about having the trying to think of the right word,
Instant reward.
the instant reward. But it's about controlling that
Oh,
gaining control of your finances, where you're going to see commercials. If there's a 60-minute show in the United States, 20 minutes is commercials. And they're going to talk
mm-hmm.
about great looking suits, great looking cars, great looking Apple phones, great looking everything. And if you actually fall for these commercials and go and spend more money than you make, well, it's easy to end up with no savings. And the other thing that Americans, strangely enough, have not realized, that I talk to a lot of people, most Americans today will retire without a pension. Now, when I was growing up, my mom and dad were school teachers, and they both had nice pensions.
Mm-hmm.
Today, and I work for companies, BP, Lockheed, Exxon, all three companies gave me a pension. So I will collect those pensions when I turn 65. All three of those companies no longer have a pension. So today, when you retire in the United States, the average Social Security payment is about, I think, $1,600. Now think about it. So for $1,600, if you don't have a pension, if you don't have savings, you've got to pay for your rent, your utilities, your gas, your car payments, food. Something's kind of important. These are just the important things. That's $1,600. It's not gonna go. So it's important, is what I teach Americans. Since you don't have a pension, there's this thing called a 401k. Is the best gift that your company can give you. You've got to contribute to the 401k, and you start off, say, at a small number. Let's say you're only contributing 4%. You're allowed to contribute, I think, up to $20,000. Try to drive it towards that $20,000. So by the time you retire, I know of a lot of people that are retiring with 1 million, 2 million, 3 million
Mm-hmm.
in their 401k accounts. So you take that money with your Social Security, and all of a sudden, you're going to have financial freedom.
The
Now,
$1,600, man. I got teenage rugby players, man. I spend more on groceries.
but Americans don't take that into account. They're making good money, $75,000, $80,000, and they're, let's say, 30 years old, and they're not thinking that one day I'm going to be 60 or whatever,
Yeah.
and I won't be able to work. So what am I going to do to take care of myself? And it's just a matter of delayed gratification. So
Mm-hmm.
you don't need a Mercedes. Maybe, and if you want a Mercedes, why don't you buy used Mercedes? It's going to be 30,000 instead of 75,000. Or why don't you buy a car that's only $20,000? But why on earth do you want to have a car payment of eight? I have a person in my family. His car payment is $790 a month. I have never had a car payment for $790 a month. I'm too. I like to say the word cheap. My wife says stop saying that. I'm too frugal to have a $800 a month car payment.
I am Scottish, so I know frugality very well.
Oh,
I always
okay.
tell my kids, we were poor, not even poor. I said we were so poor we couldn't afford the R at the end of poor. And Tracy, my wife, says stop doing that. But the thing that I do continuously in our consumer habits is I've always asked myself 3 times, do I need this?
Yeah.
Do I need this? Do I need this? And when we go out, my buddies and I, we like to go to this shooting range where you can go in and we just have fun. You pick a handgun or anything like that, and we just go and shoot rounds and have beers and wings after as an event when we can't go golfing. And I show up in my Ford Fiesta. And they've got big cars, and everybody laughs at my Ford Fiesta. I say, yeah, I paid $14,000 cash, not paying for it. And It cost me $40 of gas a month. And so all I'm driving is myself, right? And what I did is, because I was able to save for that, I was able to buy the motorcycle that I truly enjoy, that I paid $20,000 cash as well. So I said, okay, here's all the savings that I got. I think that the mentality is people, this YOLO, you only live once kind of mentality of, hey, 90, I'm going to be 90, I'll fix it when I get there. But people live longer. Like my dad's 80, 88 or something like that. And he's fit as a fiddle. Like he's not going to die for another 10, 20 years. And he retired at 55.
Wow.
So he's now been retired almost longer that he's been working. So just to the listeners, listen to what Styron is saying in regards to, delayed gratification. I think that is a wonderful term.
And you're right. The average life expectancy in the United States today is 79 years old. Now, women live longer than men. That's probably, I'm not sure if we even want to stay alive after being married for a certain period of time. Oh, wait a minute. My wife might hear that. Hopefully that's edited out so I can sleep in my own bed. But reality, women probably have a life expectancy about 85 years old. So let's say you retire at 65. That's 20 years of life that you have to look forward to. So again, people need to think more about what's going to come tomorrow. There's a book that I think is great. And my advice is go to the library and buy the book because quite honestly, after you read the book once, who needs it? You see those books behind me, that's a waste of
Mm-hmm.
money. Go to the library and buy it and look at this book. And it's called The Millionaire Next Door. And the
Mm.
reason I like this book, there are a lot of millionaires in the United States. The United States is a strange place. We have a lot of poor people and we have a lot of rich people. But the thing that most Americans don't realize about millionaires is that they live next door to them. And the average millionaire buys a used car. Matter of fact, they love
Mm-hmm.
trucks for some reason. The average millionaire lives in a house that is far smaller than he or she can afford to live in. They think about buying things. If they're going to buy a brand new iPhone, they go, well, my iPhone's only 6 years old. It's still working. Why do I need a brand new iPhone? Versus these people who get in line every time Tim Cook comes out and says, I've got the iPhone 176. Get in line and buy that thing. And here they go. Well, the average millionaire doesn't waste his or her money. They think, I don't need an iPhone, so I'm not going to buy one. And I try to do that with any major expense. I try to think to myself, do I really need it? And I won't go out and buy it. If I think this week, I'm trying to think of something I might want. Do I need that new lens for my camera? Well, I'm going to wait a few weeks and decide, Star, do you really want to spend that much money on that lens? Yes or no? Think about this. And the other question I always ask myself, lenses are kind of expensive. Do I really want to spend $2,000 on a lens? What if I spend that $2,000 on, let's say, Ford stock that doubled in 2021? So if I spend that 2000 on Ford stock, and let's say it only goes up 50% in 2022, I have $3,000 at the end of the day. Maybe I don't need another lens.
I think that the gratification, the one thing that I was able to educate. Well, let me back up a little bit. Good friend of mine out east sold his SaaS company, and he pocketed $8 million. The first thing that we went and I said, hey, let's celebrate. Let's go to sushi. I'll take you out to sushi. Let's go out and let's have a good chat and just celebrate, just you and I, because good friends. And he told me, he said, you know what, Martin, I haven't told my kids and I don't want to tell my kids. He says, I don't want my kids to grow up to be rich kids. The only thing that we changed is we got a bigger car because the kids are getting bigger. He said,
Yep.
we didn't change our house. He says, we're spending more time on trips because now we can afford to go on different trips. But I'm not letting my kids become rich kids because of my success. Because he says, I don't want to teach them, or I want to teach them the value of, it's not the value of money, it's the value of being wise with your money. I think we spin it the wrong way. We tell our kids, hey, don't, keep some money for saving, keep this for that, keep this for this. But really what we should be teaching them is how to consume strategically. Is to say, okay, yes, money is a tool, gets you there. But when the shit hits the fan and you don't have anywhere to go, you'll need money to get you out of trouble. Have you thought about that? Have you thought about, oh, wow, as I grow up, maybe something. So that foresight of consuming not in the moment, but over a longer period of time, that's now talking to you. I'm kind of realizing that's what I'm doing.
Yes. And that's what my parents taught me, both the hard work that you have to work for your money, but you have to be careful where you spend that money. My mother was a great saver. She opened my first savings account, I think I was 5 years old. And I guess I was born a nerd or a geek because I loved going to the bank and making deposits of $2 or $3 into that bank account. I just thought that was a fantastic thing. So I've always had this desire. I've always had this saving mentality because my mom believed in she would get her check and she had a portion going to bank one for her savings and a portion going to bank two for her savings. So that's what she taught me, and that's what I've modeled for my own daughter.
The I think one of the biggest situation in this day and age is understanding, because it's all digital, right? It's hard to, there's no tangible aspect to it, very little now. My youngest son, Gavin's 9, and I was like, okay, so I need some money. I don't know where I was doing, but I needed cash. So I said, I'm going to trade you. I'm going to exchange this bill for that bill. And he's like, I'm not giving you 2 bills for 1 bill. It's like, for him, he's like, in his head, he's like, no, I'm getting gypped here. I'm getting gypped. I said, no, look at it on paper. I said, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Well, I said, that's the equation that we're doing here. He said, and he's like, you could see that he was trying to connect, because we touch less and less and less the money. It becomes so easy to spend. And I think you said it best, and I think it needs to be repeated about what you said about making more than you spend. What's your theory on that?
My theory is it's a necessity. If you, and actually I'll use Mike Tyson as an example. Mike Tyson's was a great boxer. Mike Tyson made $250 million in his career. That's a lot of money. Mike Tyson declared bankruptcy. And the problem that Mike Tyson had is he was going out, he was buying these expensive cars, $100,000, $200,000 cars. He was buying multiple multi-million dollar homes. He actually paid for nothing. So he basically had a lot of banknotes on cars and loans. And Mike Tyson thought the money's going to always be coming in. I'm going to always be boxing. I'm going to make $4, $5, $10 million per fight. Well, suddenly Mike Tyson couldn't fight anymore, and he couldn't sustain that lifestyle. It's the same thing for the everyday American. I remember when I came out of school, I read this article that said I would probably work for 11 companies. Now, I thought that's ridiculous. I'm not going to work for 11 companies. I'm going to work for maximum 3 companies. I worked for 11 companies during my career. And I've been laid off, I think, 3 times. And the key thing for me was recognizing that if I lose my job, I still have a house payment. I still have my child. I still have the utilities, the groceries. I must be able to take care of my family, even if I lose my child. So that's why I've always maintained what I call the emergency savings of at least 6 months of whatever my bills are. So if my bills are $10,000 a month, at least $60,000 in there, so that I know that if I've lost my job because the company went bankrupt, or because I slipped and called my boss a moron, that for 6 months my family's fine. And between 0 and 6 months, I'm going to find some other way to earn some money. Unfortunately, too many Americans assume that the paycheck is going to keep coming. They assume, like Mike Tyson, the paycheck's going to keep coming. And one day when it doesn't, they're in trouble.
That's the key phrase in the military where we were. Assumption kills. Never assume. Always verify.
Oh, it does. I agree. And I think COVID was eye-opening for many Americans when I think it was 20 plus million Americans lost their jobs. And they were broke in a matter of days because they lived paycheck to paycheck.
The lineup, I recall, I think was June or July 2019. I forget. I mean, it's all a blur now, but and I was like, the lineup for the food bank in San Antonio was it was like something like 8 miles long. It was just ridiculous.
It was same in all the U.S. cities. The food banks were overwhelmed with the need, as too many Americans would lose they were used to getting a paycheck on Friday, and by the next Friday they had no money.
So what's the biggest, so you work with people, right? Do you do coaching and mentorship, right?
I do.
So what's the key trigger that pushes somebody to go, I need help? What's the most common kind of indicator that you have that says, "Oh, Styron, I'm in a bad spot. I need your help"? What's that top
The
1, 2, or 3?
the people who have approached me have approached because they've been reading my blog, and I've talked about savings, budgeting, investments, things of that nature. And I've talked about my real estate investments. I own about 12 rental properties in North Carolina, which gives me a cash flow. And they realize that they do not have a future savings. And in some cases, some have lost their jobs, and they've come and told me that they found out they could not survive on unemployment, whatever unemployment pays. Some of them said they had to work the rest of their lives, and to suddenly realize that, let's say 60 years old, that you cannot retire, and you're feeling lousy, and you're tired, or maybe your health is going down. So I will say the lack of retirement savings, the lack of emergency savings, and health declining but unable to retire. It is amazing in the United States when you go to the supermarket and you see people who are, I'm 63 years old, you see people who are older than I am working in the supermarket or working in McDonald's. They are not doing it because they want to.
Yeah.
They are doing these jobs in their 70s because they have to. And that's something that I would say other Americans are starting to see and starting to wake up. But the I'm not sure why, but the fear of talking about money is something that we need to get over. If you can talk about your marriage problems, then why can't you talk about money and have those conversations with your family? I think the other thing that's happening is the family model is not it's not working very well in America. I believe it's 50% divorce rate. In my race, in a black race, 20% of kids have two parents at home. So oftentimes,
Wow.
you're a mom, single mom, and that's 80% of the moms now in the black race. Your single mom is working not one job, she might be working two or three jobs. So she's not even home to help those kids understand common sense, basic
Hmm.
education. And we're losing a lot of young black people because of that problem.
Making poor choices, both nutritionally, lively. I like how easy it is to eat Cheerios and to buy Cheerios instead of buying broccoli and preparing broccoli. And I'm just picking broccoli, but the kid who was by themselves. No, I it's I think that for I want to go back to some of the root causes of this, but I think that the fear of the future. I think it's that what I'm hearing is that realization of, oh shit, right? I partied, and I don't want to say that I'm not putting, people in party modes, but like I've spent, wasn't really paying attention. And now I'm like, oh, I'm actually looking at the future and saying, well, what happens next? What's the age group? Does it vary? Is it 40s, 50s, 30s? What's the data that you're seeing in regards to that kind of awakening who are coming to you?
It's all ages. Unfortunately, it's the older generation that's starting to wake up. Now, if you are fortunate and you wake up in your 20s and 30s, that means you have decades to
Mm-hmm.
get your act together and you can dig out of this hole. When you wake up at 55, you still can make some improvements, but you're kind of you're in a problem at 55 or 60, but you still can take control and start making improvements. I would say the average person that's approaching me for assistance um, is probably in their 40s and 50s. Now, some of them, and I'm happy about this, some of them are coming and saying, how do I actually help my grandkids or my own children
Oh.
with the future? A good friend of mine, we had a conversation about what's the best thing she can do for her kids. And her kids are, get the ages, I think 20, 19, 21, 23. So these are big kids. But she wanted to know what could she do to help her kids to have a foundation so that when they get to be, say, 60, they're in better shape. And we talked about a
Mm-hmm.
Roth IRA. I love the Roth IRA. I still today think the United States government somehow made a mistake and did the right thing. And they allowed that Roth IRA. Because seldom do those people in DC do anything right, in my opinion. But the Roth IRA is like a gift from the heavens came down and said, Congress, close your eyes. Let's do something right for the American people. And they gave us this tool. I'm still amazed by that. I'm sorry, but I'm just amazed that they allow us this. The Roth IRA, basically, you pay no taxes. So you're allowed to put up to $6,000 per year, and you can start as soon as you start making money. So if you're working at McDonald's at 10 years old, you can put whatever you made, but you can put up to $6,000 per year, and then when you turn, I think it's 55 or 60, all the money in that account is yours. No taxes. You owe
Mhm.
zero taxes. There's a guy that works for Warren Buffett. Now, obviously, anyone that works for Warren Buffett is beyond me. But he has something like $100 million in his Roth IRA, because here's what he did. He took his 401k money, he probably had a couple of $1 million. He flips that into his Roth IRA, and then he started aggressively investing that money. So instead of going for a 6%, 10% returns,
Mhm.
he's going for 70, 100% returns. Well, he grew that money into about $100 million. He owes the United States federal government not one dime.
Zero.
Zero. So when my friend asked me, what can I do for my kids, I said, the Roth IRA. Let's set them up, three of them, a Roth IRA, and start off with an S&P 500 index fund, because most people think they can pick a stock. 90% of people cannot pick a good stock. So why not pick 500 stocks? The S&P 500, the top 500 stocks in the United States. Let's assume that 100 of them are bad, they suck, but let's assume another 100 are pretty good and the rest of them are in the middle. Then you're going to get about a 10% return per year. So she's setting up her three kids in a Roth IRA, and she's going to contribute what she can afford. She's also hoping to do that for her future grandkids. Another friend, she's doing the exact same thing for her grandkids. So that's the type of people who come early, who recognize I'm in pretty good shape. How do I help my children? And how do I teach my children about finance? Because what I wanted her to do is, don't just set this up and keep it from the kids. Sit down and explain to them, this is why I'm setting up a Roth IRA for you, because one day you're going to be 55 or 60. You're going to be tired of working for Styron. I hope I'm still here. And you're going to say, I got to get out of this thing. So this is going to help you. You'll be amazed how much you can accumulate from the age of 20 to the age of 60 by simply investing in this tool.
Canada has a similar called a TFSA, a tax-free savings account. Now, you
Wow.
can only put a maximum contribution per year. So it
Okay.
went from 5,000, 5,500, 6,000, back to 5,500. 1 year, you could put $10,000 in it. So it's a tax-free savings account, and it's really for that.
Okay.
And then you can apply it to different things. So it's a good place to keep your money safe from taxes, but it's not necessarily a place where you can grow your money. For us, we live in Vancouver right now, and the market is absolutely crazy. And you look at the mortgage that we have for the house, like our valuation, our house was valued at $950,000, yes, last year.
Hmm.
And because of the market demand, there's only like something like 7 or 9% of houses available for buyers. Our assessment, our state assessment, went up. My house is now worth $1.29 million.
It went up in 1 year that much?
35% in 1
Wow.
year.
Wow. Okay.
So now the question is, okay, so this trend has not stopped in British Columbia and the lower mainland since the 80s. So now we're looking at the average parent contributes $300,000 Canadian to the purchase of the house of their children. So I'm looking at my kids and I'm going, shit, I'm going to have to put $500,000 per kid. That's $2 million. I don't have $2 million in the bank account to give to my kids to buy a house.
Wow.
So now we're kind of rethinking where we live and how we live, because I don't want to impose that stress, if you want to call it that, right? The great resignation is people living these big locations to find other places. So it kind of levels out, but we're kind of like, whoa, holy. Now we're going to make, if we do decide to sell, we're going to make a stack full of money because we've paid down our mortgage aggressively, which is the right thing to do. But to buy and sell in the same market, it's a hard thing to see my children be in a position kind of like Tokyo where, the houses have been in the same ownership for 500, 600 years, right? So,
Yes. And we have that same problem in the United States where young people are really struggling to afford a home
mhm.
as uh, there are parts of the United States that have seen that same type of percentage increase. And while it's great that your parents are now sitting on half a million or plus equity in their house, here you are fresh out of school. You can't afford to buy a house even half the size of your parents.
Mhm.
The other problem we're facing in the United States is the college loan situation. A friend of mine, she graduated with, it's not a PhD, but it's something similar to that in physical therapy. She came out of school owing 250,000 US dollars. She's 27 years old. Now, you couple that, your whatever that, I'm not sure what that payment is, but that's a pretty significant payment that you're making. How can you afford to buy a house if you owe $250,000 on your college loan? So many young people in America are really they're in trouble because of the college loans, which quite honestly, colleges in the United States are some of the most unethical, greedy companies, they're not companies, but
Mm.
I've ever seen in my life what they're doing to these young people. But it's basically destroying the future for many young people in this country.
It is. I completely agree. I completely agree. There's two things that, in my opinion, COVID really exposed is how poor our approach to health is, or managing health,
Hmm.
and how poor our educational services or situations are.
Oh, you're right.
It's deploring the amount of time off that my kids have and don't have school, and when they do have school, and then we impose all these restrictions. And again, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm not against things, and far from it. But it just shows, like, we've been at this for 2 years. You would think that you have, pardon my French, a fucking clue of what you're doing.
They do not. They do not. It has been so embarrassing watching the 2 million federal employees in the United States and the, what is it, 2 million federal contractors completely F bomb this crisis up.
And for me, it just emphasizes what we are talking about: owning your financial future, right?
Yes.
Because you cannot rely, and I'm not saying that, so I don't want Styron and I to come across as anti-government and anti-this and anti-that. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that life is changing. When our parents, they had a pension, they worked for the
Yep.
same company, the government was more stable, there was less issues to deal with. Now there's more population, the pie is still the same size, but you have to cut it in 7 billion pieces instead of 5.
You're right.
So you need to take care of your own financial freedom, because the government funds are going to run out. I think that.
Absolutely. I was going to say, you look at college expenses. I think when I came out of college, I owed $4,000, and I actually had the 4,000 in the bank because I didn't need the $4,000. So I said, I'm going to borrow the $4,000. I pay zero interest on it. And then
Mhm.
when I get a job, I'm going to give it back. And I'm going to, that's at the time you probably make 7, 8% interest on your money. So I'm going to just make it off the interest. But then I figured out, wait a minute, I've got this $4,000 and there's condos selling for $50,000. I can use this $4,000 and buy a condo. So I bought a condo and I was paying less in my mortgage than I was paying in my rent. So that's what I did with my $4,000, and I paid the 4,000 off. You cannot afford college for a month for $4,000 in the United States. I think one of the colleges I went to is charging 75,000 a year now. My daughter went to a state funded college that I paid $150,000 for. So college is simply unaffordable, and too many people are again making this gratification decision. I want to go to school in X, so I want to go to
Oh
school
yeah,
in
yeah.
in
Ivy League.
California, Ivy League schools. versus if you go into in the United States, state schools cost about half the cost if you go out of state. So clearly, it makes more sense go to a state school. But too many go, no, no. Uh, uh, Martin's going to UCLA. I'm going to UCLA, regardless of the cost. Too many young people are also not looking at community college. You can go to a community college for $2,000-3,000 a year, pick up the bulk of what you're going to have to take for your first 1 or 2 years, transfer that into a state college, and come out with a 4-year degree for probably $50,000. That makes sense. But too many of them are just going, I want to go to MIT, I want to go to Berkeley, I want to go to Florida to party, and they're going into this massive debt.
And for me, it's the pressure that it puts on the parents as well. Of, I want my kid to go to MIT. I want my kid to be the best. There is nothing wrong in being normal.
There absolutely is not.
And like that, you're not putting pressure on your kids. Your kids really learn to develop their skills and their problem-solving capabilities, and understanding that the key to success in life is not to have the big-ass job, is to be happy to what you do on a daily basis. And to be able to be happy, you have to be prosperous. That's my vision of it. If I give the definition of prosperity is profit plus sustainability equals prosperity. We work Monday to Friday to pay for the activities that we want to do on the weekend. We work 48, 49 weeks out of the year, so we can take 3 to 4 weeks off out of the year. So that prosperous model has to apply. What you do for a week, what you do for a year, what you do for a lifetime has to apply. And I think there's too little people that kind of view that prosperous model of saying, okay, well, sorry, let me get back to where I wanted to get is now this methodology, the thought process of I need to pay for my kid's school. If you've got 4 kids times $75,000, that's $300,000. If you got 4 kids in a 4-year age span that are going through college, which one do you pick? Hey, you're the smart kid. You go to college. You're the dumbass. You're not going, right? I know, that's not fair.
You're right. The average American cannot afford to pay for their kids' college. Now, I actually started saving for my daughter's college education the year she was born, because I knew that I wanted to go to college. It's going to be expensive, so I knew I had to save and invest so that I would be able to pay for her college. Unfortunately, too many parents, because they are spending more than they earn, are not able to help their kids go to college, and consequently, they're coming out like my friend owing $250,000, and that's actually not even a high number. I know some. My dentist, her daughter owes $500,000 because she is an MD. So
that's $500,000.
$500,000.
That's more than houses in North Carolina. I mean,
it is. It is the university system in the United States is broken, and this is what bothers me about our politicians. Their solution is, well, let's let the government pay some of this debt off versus let's address what the root cause is.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that in the United States, colleges have been increasing their tuition about 7 to 9% per year, while inflation has been averaging 2% a year. A simple solution is to tell any state-funded college, you will tie your tuition to inflation. You cannot increase your tuition greater than inflation. So get the cost under control again. But instead, the government is going to say, well, we're going to just pay off whatever they're thinking of, $50,000, $100,000, which will only tell the colleges, oh, happy days are here again. We can just keep raising these tuition, and the suckers will keep coming, borrowing all this money, get degrees in what color are butterfly wings, and then come out and say, wow, I cannot get a job. Apparently, no one cares what color butterfly wings are. That's how ridiculous this is.
I find it unfair to parents, and I mean what they do is they draw on the desire of the parents, which is biological, of giving a better life than what we've had, and that is the American dream coming over.
It is
working hard and being able to provide a safe environment for you to be in and to raise your family and to provide a better situation than what you had before. And my opinion is they're preying on that desire for parents. I don't find it fair. Now, you are wise to do it, but why is it fair that a parent has to put so much money aside of their work, of their revenue, to just pay for the education of their child? And I'm not saying that we shouldn't. I'm not saying that. But you should not have to strategize it. It should be like grocery bill. It's like, okay, yeah, we can afford $300 a month for advanced education. I agree. Not all post-secondary education should be for everybody. And I don't think it should be free. I don't think that it should be... I think that the pricing should be definitely regulated because it has an impact on people's livelihood, and mental health.
No, it does. And too many parents are sacrificing their future to pay for their kids' college education. And what I advise people who ask me, your number one priority is your retirement. So if you have two or three kids and you've got a 401k account, if you can't afford to help your kids go through college, that's great. But you must fund for your retirement, and that's your number one priority. So if your kids have to take out loans, so be it. If you're able to help them with the loans in the future, that's great. But also sit down and have that conversation with your child of, you do not need to go to California. Our family can't afford for you to go to California, and you can't afford it. I want you to go to this community college for 2 years, and that I can pay for. And then when you come out, I want you to go to the state university for 2 years, and then you can come out with a $50,000 college loan, get a degree that you can actually get a job in, and have a good future.
I mean, the key thing too is, for me, it's learning the skills that you want. I'm dyslexic, so education was very difficult for me. Reading is difficult for me, so I'm not saying that the education path is for everybody, but being able to put money aside for a trade, because that's what I told my kids. You are going to go to trade school before you go to university. If you want to go to university, I will support, but you're going to learn to use your hands. You're going to use social skills, and because as much as I love the digital world and great, if you don't know how to fix a doorknob or, change a light plug or whatever it is, I don't say that you have to be a trade, but you have to learn how to deal with human beings. And that financial literacy, like grocery shopping, is so funny. I have to tell this story. I was out with my boy and we're grocery shopping, and my wife, Tracy, she said, okay, make sure you buy lemons. And so we're at the store, and I was like, oh, I went to grab the lemons. He said, whoa, Dad. I was like, what? Gavin goes, well, those ones are less expensive. I was like, what? And like my 9-year-old boy,
He's looking out for you.
He's like, Dad, hold on a second. Those are smaller. They're not organic, but we don't need organic because we just need to juice them.
There you go.
And I looked at my boy and I was like, damn it, man. Thank you very much. And so I wanted to talk about that because that financial kind of set of spending less than you make is just is a habit. It's something you live day in, day out.
But obviously, you've taught your son that because he pointed that out to you, because you've probably pointed that out to him on ice cream or something else at the time.
That's more Mom. I think that's more.
Oh, okay. Well, so congratulations to Mom. And one thing you said that I fully agree with: everyone does not need to go to college. Our politicians are trying to say, "Oh, everyone needs to go to college in the United States." No, you do not. There are great trades out there. My high school classmate was a bricklayer. Unfortunately, he passed. He was a bricklayer. He built a company with hiring other bricklayers. He then built a gas station with a store. He built a restaurant. This man, when he died a millionaire. So you can be very successful in the trades in the United States and not come out with $250,000 of debt.
The, uh, the way that I explain it to people is that not everybody needs to be a predator. Not everybody has to be a carnivore. You don't have to be a hunter. There's nothing wrong in. So the reference I'm making is to, we've got all the kids, they've got this craze of being an entrepreneur. I want to start my own business. I want to do my own business. Well, if you don't spend time in the companies of different level, from a small business to mom and pop shop to medium size to an enterprise, how do you know? How will you gain the experience of what to do and what not to do to be able to build a good company? Just because you got a friggin' good idea doesn't mean that you know anything about business.
I agree. And I wish the American people would use that same model for the people they elect as politicians. If you never have worked in a McDonald's, then why on earth are you qualified to lead the United States of America? As we tend to look for people who are tall, have a full head of hair, can read a teleprompter, and we vote for them for President of the United States. But I'm sorry, as you can tell by our financial results, that's not working. I prefer to have people with both the government and the business background that understand how business works and understand how they can get out of the way of business to allow business to thrive.
I wanna put a big asterisk on what Styron is saying. So I want to bring it back to CEOs. What Styron is really saying, and how this applies to the community who's listening, is really being a father figure, being a role model, being able to help the people within your circle of influence. That means oftentimes your employee. What Styron is saying, reach out to Styron. Get a program going. How can I help, right? How can I help? I can't give everybody all the money in the world, but that's not what we're asking. We're saying, hey, listen, help spread the word of being financially savvy, being financially stable by understanding consumer patterns. Help your people by spending, I don't know, buying a book, buying a couple of books, by having the questions, by offering that through your EAP service of not just mental health, but look at the causes that causes mental health, right? We can spend a whole bunch of things of money on mental health, and I'm all for it. For the listeners who listen frequently, you know that a 13-year-old girl that I coach with my daughter's field hockey team committed suicide. And I take mental health very seriously, but you look at the root cause of why do people have mental health? Well, if they're in the dire situation and dire financial situation, well, that's the cause. So if we didn't have the financial situation, if that person was educated in that financial history that Styron is saying, then, and I'm not saying that they would not have mental illness, but it's something less to tick off the list of cause and effect, right?
And I think another thing that CEOs can do, recognize you have a lot of young professionals coming out. They don't understand investments and financials. And you're offering them a 401k, or I'm not sure what the equivalent of 401k is in Canada, but you're offering something of that nature. And the employees don't understand that it's a good thing to sign up. You can offer some voluntary free workshops on whatever tools you have that the employees can learn about it. The other problem, the employees have come to me and said, I tried to sign up for my 401k and it had 127 options. How on earth am I supposed to pick the two or three things to invest in out of 127 options? So again, you can offer some workshops from, in the United States, you can use companies like Fidelity, Vanguard, et cetera, to come in and explain to your employees. So here's what they're offering in your 401k, and let's break it into some buckets for you to figure out what's the best strategy for you so they understand the risk profiles of what's being offered. And you can help simplify these things for the employees. So I think there's a lot of free classes we can offer employees to put them in better shape to move them towards their retirement.
The people first, right? We're talking about finances, but we're putting people first. I mean, think about the investment of hiring somebody. Let's say it costs you $1,000 to have that person provide a Zoom with a couple of, extra meetings on the side. $1,000, $2,000. Look at the investment that it has on your leadership and how people will trust you, because people, they always come back to, do you hear me? Do you see me? Do I matter?
Yep.
And it's not about providing money to the world. It's about saying, you matter to me. Financial literacy and being financial free and understanding your spending habits is important to me. I need you to feel safe in my care. So I have a duty to care for the people in my care. And so therefore I'm going to offer you something. So imagine the adoption, the leadership, the trust credits that you're going to build by just picking one subject, like Styron is mentioning, and how you can help a single mom that has 3 kids and helping her budget, helping her understand, maybe working with her, maybe investing in somebody who can help her with 401k. There's so many things that you can do if you are intentional about the solution, about an intentional problem.
Agree. And when I used to manage people, I would ask them, the new people, have you signed up for that 401k? And I was sort of annoying. I would keep asking until finally say, Styron, I signed up. And then I would say, well, let me tell you how I managed to get mine up to the maximum. If I get a 3% raise, maybe I put 1.5% of that in the 401k and I keep the other 1.5%. So I just keep growing it. Say, okay, I got this. So many people that used to work for me have contacted me and said, Styron, thank you so much for pushing the 401k because now I have X amount in the 401k and our retirement is looking good. I also used to talk about real estate investment. I have a friend who she has, I think, 20 some real estate properties. She says, Styron, thank you so much for talking about real estate because my husband and I really jumped all over it. And we're ahead of you, by the way. I said, hey, I'm great. That's great. I'll be borrowing some money from you soon. But to me, and I think I learned this from my parents, care about people in your organization. Treat them like people that are of value to you, and you will reap the benefits from that.
I agree. Do it in a way where you're spending less than you're making.
Yes.
So I'll close off with this. When we were young men and we were in Montreal, we did we didn't have a lot of money. So we were very, what's the word I'm looking for? Creative in ways to make money. And we would always find ways to, we would raid gardens in the uphill, so uptown. So we'd go to the uptown side, we'd go in the gardens and we'd steal a whole bunch of vegetables. And we'd go downtown to the Chinese restaurants and we'd sell the vegetables.
I like the entrepreneurial spirit of doing that.
So if you lived in uptown Montreal and you got your garden raided about 30, 40 years ago,
they know who to blame for that.
Send me the bill. The point that I'm trying to make is you don't have to be rich to find innovative solutions to helping people find financial literacy and financial freedom. It's just taking the time to make proper choices and decisions.
I have to agree with that. I think about my own family. I came from a background in the southern part of the United States where there was racism when I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't allowed to go to school with whites until I think the 7th grade. I remember my doctor's door used to have the Negroes only and the whites only.
Oh, man.
But I still was taught to hold my head with pride and that I could become anything I wanted to become. And I remember watching my grandfather, this man who had little education, who grew up poor and ended up building this farm of 300 some acres. He had a farm supply that he sent to the cities. He had a dry cleaners. He had a country store. So this man from nothing, I watched him and said, if you have the mindset and the work ethic, you can become anything in the United States of America. So when I hear people criticize our country, I still think to myself, we can become anything we work hard enough to achieve. Let's not worry about what happened in the past. Let's look forward to the future.
Wise words, Styron. Wise word. Thank you very much for being on the show today, Styron.
I greatly enjoyed it.
Thank you very much for taking the time to talk about a very important subject, I think. What's the one piece of literature? Pick one, because you've read them all.
Mm-hmm.
Pick one book that somebody's listening to this and they're a CEO and they want to learn more about how they can become better, but also help their team become better. What's the one book, video, resource, person that you can think of? At the exception of you, of course, with your website, but that's going to be all at the bottom of the...
Warren Buffett. There's a book about Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett has actually never written a book about himself. And there's several books out there, and I cannot think of the author's name, but Warren Buffett is one of the best leaders in the United States today. And that book teaches you how Warren Buffett came from a child to be as successful. I think he's worth over $100 billion. He's given away about $50 billion to be as successful as he is. And Warren, I will have to send you the name of that book so you can add it at the end. But that's the one book I would advise any CEO to read, because it is a book about a CEO. And I remember two things that Warren Buffett said. The most important decision that he had to make was the woman he was going to marry. And I have to agree with that. And the other one that Warren Buffett has 2 degrees. One's an MBA. But Warren Buffett said the one piece of education he is most proud of, the only diploma he has hanging in his office, is the Dale Carnegie Communications course that he took to improve his public speaking. So that's the type of insights you will get from this book about Warren Buffett. He's one of my role models. He's one of my heroes.
Great example. He goes to McDonald's every morning and he has
every morning
an egg McMuffin and a small coffee.
Yes, he does. And I have been to 2 of Warren Buffett's restaurants. I went to his annual shareholders meeting, and they tell you that these are Warren's 2 favorite restaurants. And I go to those 2 restaurants, and these are nothing fancy. So you can get a good American meal for a reasonable amount of money. But I still enjoy going. This is where Warren Buffett took Bill Gates for his hamburger. So that's good enough for me.
Meatloaf, gravy, mashed potatoes, and green peas.
There you go. That's a Warren Buffett style dinner, except the man does love some steak. So.
Thank you so very much, Styron. Always nice catching up with you. We always have fun, enjoyable, and very topical conversation of in-depth. Your wisdom really shows through. I want to make sure that the audience knows that Styron has contributed to the safety, the success, and he's opinionated like we all are, rightfully so. But I'd rather have a debated conversation with an opinion person than a person who just follows the trend. So thank you, Styron, for being a role model in both the safety world for so many years and for helping people both on the financial side. And I think that the race conversation always sparks up emotion when I hear about it, because it is so fresh and so new, and it's so... It bugs me to feel that it's still there. What's happening in China? What's happening in Myanmar? And it doesn't go away.
That's pretty horrible. It is, and I'm opinionated, and as you said, and what's going on in China is wrong. I honestly wish the United States had not sent our athletes to China. I know that people say that's unfair to the athletes, and it probably is. But my preference would have been we do not participate in those Olympics.
I agree. I fully support that. But anyways, and that would be the topic of the future show. So thank you, Styron.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, you have a great day.
Thank you very much. With that said, my name is Martin Hunter. I'm the host of What CEOs Talk About. If you'd like to, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for when we send that out. So appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in to What CEOs Talk About. Make sure to click subscribe to get notified about future episodes, or check us out at www.whatceostalkabout.com.